أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. Welcome everybody in today's lesson of the Introduction to Fiqh course. This is lesson number 8. We will be talking inshallah about the Hanbali Madhab. So we will talk about Imam Ahmad. We'll talk about the basis or sources of the Madhab. And the scholars or main scholars of books of the Madhab as well. We will address the problem with multiple narrations in the Madhab. You will understand that shortly. What is meant by that is basically there are many multiple narrations about Imam Ahmad for some reasons that we will be talking about. So why is that, and what the scholars or Hanbali scholars do in order to address this issue. And because we are talking about the Hanbali Madhab, we will have to address the elephant in the room, which basically the corporeality like aspects of the Madhab, or the corporeality approach or scholars that has been affiliated to the Madhab, as well as the extremism that sneaked into the Hanbali Madhab. So we'll talk about why that happened and how, and we'll also address or talk about how these scholars, the Hanbali scholars, what they have done in order to purify and try to purify and rebut those deviants out of the Madhab. First of all, we need to talk about Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal himself, the Imam of the Madhab we are talking about. So Imam Ahmad was a great scholar. He is Abu Abdullah Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn Hanbal ibn Hilal ibn Asad al-Rabi'i al-Shaybani al-Baghdadi. So he is one of the greatest scholars and greatest imams, one of the greatest imams and scholars who received consensus from peers for his scholarship, piety, knowledge, and leadership as a scholar. He was born in 164 and died 241. He had extensive travels to compile hadith and knowledge. He went to Mecca, Medina, Sham, Levant, sorry about the typo here, Yemen, Kufa, Basra, and Al Jazeera Al Arabiya. He also had many shaykhs, teachers, including Sufyan ibn Uyayna, Ibrahim ibn Sa'ad, Yahya al-Qattan, Waqi', and others. His students include al-Bukhari, Imam al-Bukhari, Imam Muslim, Imam Abu Dawud, al-Dhuhali, Abu Zar'a al-Razi. All those are great scholars, as you know. And since we mentioned al-Bukhari, we're gonna perhaps talk about that in a little bit detail later on, about when we talk about the Quran fitna and creation, was that it is created or not. But there was a disagreement and an issue that occurred or happened between Imam al-Bukhari and Imam al-Zuhali. And Imam al-Zuhali is one of Bukhari's teachers. So he basically narrated from him. He took hadith from him. And Imam al-Zuhali, based on his understanding, which was like not correct understanding of some of Imam Ahmad's sayings, basically took the position that you cannot say that whatever the words that you utter, reading Quran, reciting Quran, so you recite Quran, whatever comes out of your mouth, the lafz, the uttering of the words, is created. If you say that, you are Jahmi. If you didn't say that, you are Jahmi. Is basically non-created. That's basically the position they kept, which is totally wrong and nonsense. Imam al-Bukhari rebutted that and said, no, it's not incorrect. And he had even he authored or wrote a book talking about that and saying the lafz bil Quran is created. You produce it. It's created. Something that it's hadith, right? So anyway, so al-Zuhali, Imam al-Zuhali then basically said Imam Bukhari is deviant. Nobody sits with him, and anybody sits with him will don't come to my sessions and my lessons. Everybody stayed except Imam Muslim. Imam Muslim was also in the lesson. He was attending that lesson for al-Zuhri, because al-Zuhri was like an older, a bigger, like an older and more senior Imam. So he basically left. He said, no, I'm saying the same as Imam Bukhari, and he left his session. And basically those people started to even oppress Imam Bukhari until he had to leave the country, run out of the country, or the city that he was in, lived in other city, also being oppressed, and almost as if he is in house arrest until he died, rahmatullah alayh. So it shows you the amount of extremism and intolerance some of those scholars had based or because of their inability to have fully comprehension of the text and the sayings of the imams and the ulama and so on. So they had their own misunderstanding, and they imposed that by force and by like words and by oppression of others, just trying to force them to follow what they say, and then just call the others deviants and non-Muslims and whatever, which is basically, as we see now, a lot of people do that, extremism and that kind of behavior. But anyway, we'll talk about that as we go along, just a side note. Okay, among his peers is al-Madini, Ali ibn al-Madini, a great Imam of hadith as well. We're talking about Imam Ahmad, so the Imam al-Madini is peer to Imam Ahmad, like a peer to him, but Imam al-Madini was very, very respectful of Imam Ahmad. And al-Bukhari used to say, I did not see myself like less knowledgeable or less than anybody I met except Ali ibn al-Madini. So that gives you like the great knowledge and the great hifz and the great understanding of that great Imam Ali ibn al-Madini. So that Imam al-Madini used to say, Sidi Ahmad ibn Hanbal advised me never perform a hadith except from a book. Okay, so basically, because he was very respectful of Imam Ahmad, although he was a peer, more or less a peer to him, in the same generation, same level, he basically respected him and called him Sidi. Right, and this again, it basically rebuts those saying you cannot say Sidi or Fulan and so on. Anyway, and then he also said that the second point that you can take from that is the amount of effort Imam Ahmad wanted, or his accuracy. He doesn't want to make anything, say any word, unless it is fully confirmed. There is a book, it is written, it is documented. So basically, for Imam Ahmad, it is performing orally and by book, by hifz and by book, both together, so that if it happened that maybe your recollection one day is not great, you can have a book and basically make sure that it's right. Also, whatever in the book you can correct if there is a typo or whatever, because you are hafiz, so they have to come together. So basically, that give you like a glimpse of the character and the great virtue and traits of Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, that he wanted to correct and make sure that and everything that has been performed, hadith, and related to the Prophet, peace be upon him, it has to be very, very accurate and affirmed, no letter more or less. It is also said that ilm of this time reached for Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, who is the most jurist or faqih of them, Ali ibn al-Madini, the most knowledgeable of that ilm, of the ilm, Ibn Ma'in, who is the most writing of it, and Abu Bakr ibn Shaybah, who is the most hafiz of it. So those are like a great scholars at the time, and every one of them had like a more distinguishing character or something like the other peers and the other scholars at the time knew each one of them for. The main work of the Imam Ahmad is the Musnad Ahmad, one of the hadith books. It's a very extensive hadith book. He also wrote other books about various areas of ilm al-hadith and others. He was very opposed of his students writing his fatwa and opinions. So he instructed them to write only hadith without his commentary or opinions or whatever. Don't write anything, I say, just the hadith itself. Strip out from your book anything that says Imam Ahmad said so and so or didn't say so and so. Just what I say as a hadith. حدثنا فلان. We through that person to that person to that person, the Prophet peace be upon him said so and so. That's done. Anything else I tell you, don't write it down. So that because of his piety and he's scared that anything he might say is maybe incorrect, and if it happened that he says something incorrect and it is written to him and people then followed it, he will be like responsible for that. So he didn't want anything like that. He was very pious, very, very pious. He was accounting himself for the words. Like he wouldn't say anything unless he's sure about, he knows about, and in case that he doesn't know, or maybe he says something wrong or whatever, he didn't want that to be written so that he is not responsible for. He may hold off from fatwa when he's asked about anything. He will hold off if there are contradictory evidence, like if two hadith or two things that he basically say as contradictory, he just say basically I don't know. Or if there are different Sahabi's opinion about something, about athar or anything like that, he will basically refuse to do fatwa about it. His opinion and mazhab was actually collated a few generations after he died through several scattered narrations by his students and students of his students. So that's how his madhab was created. That's why it basically lagged in terms of being a madhab comparing to the other three madhabs, to the extent that for some period of time, it was not even considered a standalone madhab on itself. It's basically just some narrations or whatever. And basically the three madhabs or the madhabs of Ahl Sunnah were just three. So those who narrated Imam Ahmad's opinions include his son, Salih, and Abdullah ibn Imam Ahmad, and Ahmad ibn Hani al-Athram, Abu Bakr al-Marwazi, Harb ibn Ismail al-Karmani, and Ibrahim ibn Ishaq al-Harbi. So those are some of the like the narrators, the students of Imam Ahmad who narrated his opinions. So it was basically just narrations, okay, because Imam Ahmad instructed them to not write anything. And then after Imam Ahmad died, they started like scattering, writing a word, a statement there, a statement here, a commentary here, a commentary there, and so on. Then one of the most important collators of Imam Ahmad madhab is Abu Bakr Ahmad al-Khallal. He died 311. Actually, some of them, not one more. Also, Omar al-Khariqi and Abdul Aziz ibn Ja'far, also known as Ghulam al-Khallal, was like a main student of the first guy here, Abu Bakr Ahmad al-Khallal. So these are the most important collators of Imam Ahmad madhab. So those are who took the previous narrations here and there and started compiling that into a madhab. And you can see, we'll see when we talk about the books, that even didn't happen until over 100 years after Imam Ahmad died. And Abu Bakr Ahmad al-Khallal, this man, he's a great scholar in fiqh and so on and so forth. But there was a feature of some of like in the madhab, who were corporealists, and they started very early. Started even with that guy. And this man has a book called the Sunnah. It is full of corporeality and extremism views and so on. Even when we talked about falsification, if in this course, if you remember the lesson number 3, if I remember, I think it was lesson number 3. You would we talked about that and how there's another book also called the Sunnah by his son Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal's son Abdullah, and that this book is not fully affirmed that it's by him, or not at least full like in its entirety by him. But if it actually if it is by him, then even Abdullah ibn Imam Ahmad would have been corporeal. All right. And there's a problem. That the problem is these madhab grouped two main streams, as we will see as we go on. So now let's have a little bit of a sidebar about the fitna of the Quran creation, how it started and why and so on. And the reason we're talking about it is because Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal was or has struggled with it and has been imprisoned and tortured and so on. So since we're talking about Imam Ahmad, we cannot ignore this part. But I mean, this is a big topic in itself, and we'll talk hours perhaps just to cover it fully. So we're just giving a very brief history and like some putting it into context, more or less. So, well, if you ever came across the Bible, you will see that John starts by, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and so on. So basically, this word, what they are trying to say is that it's Jesus, and that's why Jesus, Isa alayhi salam, as they believe in, is basically Son of God or God, and so on, as you know, in the Trinity. So basically, this was an issue that Christians were preaching all along, even after Muslims opened the countries, and they kept. There was no forcing anybody to accept Islam as a religion. They kept preaching their theology, which is fair enough. That's their theology. They're preaching it. So there has to be a rebut to that. Also, Hashwaya, which talked about the Hashwaya group before, those who are has a lack of understanding or takes things literally and so on, they kept insisting that the Quran, which is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, word of God, is not created. And that's a problem because, okay, so basically you agree with Christians then there was a word, or the word of Allah, the Quran is not created, it was with Allah, and Christians just say, okay, it's Jesus, you already agree with us, right? And therefore, Aqidah scholars were rebutting that, didn't agree with that. So they're rebutting that. And at the time, the spearhead of Muslims, Aqidah scholars, were al-Mu'tazila, because they were like fully developed or reached a great development stage than Ahl al-Sunnah. We're more focused on fiqh and language and hadith and Quran, tafsir, and so on. Al-Mu'tazila spearheaded the defense of Aqidah. Like they were rebutting others, rebutting philosophers, they were rebutting Christians, rebutting Jews, and so on. And they were also great scholars in themselves. However, it was like the first round is not always perfect, right? So they got affected, Mu'tazila themselves got affected by wrong principles and established wrong principles that didn't or that contradicted with some. So now we talked about that a little bit in more detail, I think, in Al-Aqidah, so let's not repeat ourselves. But anyway, the Mu'tazila at the time were basically rebutting that and were spearheading the rebut of any issue that contradicts with Islam, whether it is from philosophers, from Christians, from Jews, or whatever. So at that time, this issue started to like really take contraction and cause disturbance among Muslims and among the country. So, but also not to forget that there were other great scholars like Imam at the time, like Imam Ibn Kullab and Al-Harith al-Muhasibi and others. They were great scholars also from Ahl Sunnah side, but their school didn't really develop fully. It hadn't developed until Imam Abil Hasan al-Ash'ari came and basically established it as a school and reinforced it with proper principles and so on. So what happened then? Well, Imam Ahmad suffered in the fitna of creation of Quran. First, Al-Ma'mun, who was a son of Harun al-Rashid, he died 218. called upon, he was affected then by the main scholars at his time who rebutting the against or saying, rebutting everything against Islam in terms of Aqidah and theology specifically, were Mu'tazila scholars. So because of that, he basically called upon all scholars to declare that the Quran is a creation of Allah. Okay? Those who denied were imprisoned and tortured. However, he died, as you can see, he died before bringing in Imam Ahmad to test him. Okay? Imam Ahmad, as we said, he was born 160, died 241. So anyway, his successor and his brother as well, al-Mu'tasim, he was the one who actually imprisoned Imam Ahmad for 28 months. And then he released him in 2020. Al-Mu'tasim himself died 227. Al-Wathiq, his son, came after that. He didn't live for long. He died young, at about 32 years old. He died 232. And there was nothing done to Imam Ahmad at the time. He was just basically, at that time, it wasn't like fully respected of Imam Ahmad or not. It's basically just neutral, more or less. And then Al-Mutawakkil, his brother, died 247. He honored Imam Ahmad and respected him and elevated his rank among other scholars. Basically, like started to gain traction the madhab and basically the against al-Mu'tazila. Now al-Mu'tazila, the tide started to turn against them. Okay. Of course, Imam Ahmad stood like his ground, and despite all the imprisonment and all the torture, and despite the fact that the vast majority of scholars declared that the Quran is created just to get out of it, of that torture, Imam Ahmad stood his ground and said, no, it is not, and so on. Now, the problem here was there are two cross-purposes statements, and that really wasn't established and clarified and so on until Imam Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari. He was the Ash'ari Madhab is basically what solved the problem. It sorted the matter. Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari was born 263 and died 324. His teacher was al-Jubba'i, because at the start he was actually al-Jubba'i was the greatest and one of the greatest Mu'tazila imams at the time. Was actually his stepfather. But Imam al-Ash'ari, he left the Madhab al-Mu'tazila and established Madhab Ahl-Sunnah and Aqidah, as we said, started to fully develop and basically started to be stronger than al-Mu'tazila Madhab and took traction, and basically Mu'tazila started to decline. One of the reasons that it started to decline, especially that issue about fitnat al-Khalq al-Quran, is Imam al-Ash'ari sorted it. It's basically solved the issue. Now, we talked about that in detail in the Aqidah lessons. In Aqidah lessons, yes, an Aqidah course. But just briefly, Al-Quran, Kalamullah as a sifa, Kalamullah as an attribute, this is not created, that's an attribute. However, Kalamullah, Al-Quran, that we read and recite and print in mushafs and write by our hands, this is not the sifa, this is not the attribute. It is a creation of us and creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course, like ultimately. And we do that, we produce that. It is created, but it is guiding, it is a guidance, or it is a reflection, it is something that relates to the sifa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it is not the sifa itself. Right? So that's how it was sorted. So it basically, in a sense, Kalamullah or the Quran refers to two things. Kalamullah, God's speech, refers mostly at the first meaning of it is the attribute. Al-Quran, the first meaning of it is the Quran that we write and recite and recite. But it could also refer to, like, both of them may be used interchangeably, and this is where the confusion may come about. When we say Kalamullah as a speech, as an attribute, that is certainly not created. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't have any attribute that is created. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala attributes, they do not leave him and come into another person or become another person or anything like that. Dhatullah, qul huwa Allahu ahad. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like that, he is wahida. So that was the solution of this thing. And then again, as we talked about, the issue of whether what you like, lafzi bil Quran makhluq. Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal said a statement which got misunderstood. So he said actually two statements. Kalamullah, al-Quran, Kalamullah غير مخلوق. Quran, Kalamullah غير مخلوق means the Quran, I mean specifically what I feel now for when I use the Quran as or reference, like I mean by Quran, Kalamullah, the speech of Allah as an attribute, is not created. However, a Quran, as we said, the Quran, which is what we recite, what we write, and so on and so forth, is created. That's basically the Mus'haf has a printed copy, like a publisher did. So I mean, anybody who says it's not created is a crazy person for sure. So that was the issue. And the other statement that Imam Ahmad said as well is, whoever said lafzi bil Quran makhluq is jahmi. Anybody who says my uttering or my words of the Quran is created is a jahmi. Right? Again, this and this is created like the issue that we talked about earlier about what happened between al-Dhuhali and Imam al-Bukhari, because some of Imam Ahmad's and some of those basically Ahlul Hadith were affiliated with Ahlul Hadith with that kind of narrow-minded and literal-minded understanding. They basically took that to mean that it's anybody who says that is Jahmi. And also Imam Ahmad has another statement that Jahmi is kafir, which is everybody agrees on. But who is the Jahmi? That's the issue. Who is the Jahmi? They will call everybody Jahmi, and everybody who disagree with them is Jahmi, and so on. So the issue with this statement is Imam Ahmad saying Imam Ahmad was tortured, was imprisoned. He didn't want that fitna to continue. So basically he wanted to shut it down. And at that time, anybody who wanted to trigger the debate and start talking, they will start, you know what you say about the lafzi bil Quran, is it makhluk or not makhluk? So Imam Ahmad want to close that door. Just don't talk to them. Don't go there. Okay. However, Imam Bukhari, like at his time, the cat is out of the box. He has to clarify to those ignorant people and like hashwaya that, come on, be sensible. Lafzi bil Quran, it is created, and not everybody who says that is Jahmi. But Dhuhali didn't accept that, and just basically, as we said earlier in the lesson, there were an issue between him and Imam al-Bukhari. And before we leave this, also Imam Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari, among his teachers are Abu Ishaq al-Marwazi and Ibn Suraj, two main figures of Shafi'i Madhab, as we talked about them before in the previous lessons. All right, let's now go to the basis of sources or the sources of the Hanbali Madhab. Like there is much difference, Quran and Sunnah, but Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal has the Quran and Sunnah together at the same level, not like the other madhabs where they have Quran at a higher level and Sunnah as a second. Imam Ahmad has Quran and Sunnah same level. He also considers Sahaba consensus. Otherwise, he could select the closest, the closer of the opinions of the Sahaba to the Quran and the Sunnah. If there is a difference between Sahaba, he will also use inference when necessary. In terms of the scriptures text, Al-Quran and Sunnah, Imam Ahmad gives scripture extensive consideration and was known for stopping at what the text says. So in the usul of his madhab, the text is sufficient for rules related to actions of people in the entirety, in the whole. Basically, his madhab or his view is that Quran and Sunnah include everything that anybody would need, right? Which again, everybody agrees with that, but it is how to understand that, how to develop it, and or how to apply it, and so on. That's where is the issue lies, right? And this is a thing that it was said before, that Imam Ahmad's madhab is very delicate, and there is a very like a hairline or a border, very minor, very fine line between following Imam Ahmad and falling out of Imam Ahmad madhab, as we will see shortly. Also, Imam Ahmad considered the Quran and Sunnah at the same level in this regard, provided Sunnah is sahih. So whatever he considered sahih and affirmed is basically as the Quran. And therefore, in the madhab, Sunnah is clarifying the Quran, which is, again, everybody agrees with. And if there is an apparent contradiction, they do not disregard, or the madhab al-Hanbali will not disregard the Sunnah, and will consider the Quran to be interpreted in accordance with the Sunnah, in light with the Sunnah, right? Now, again, to some extent, there is an overlap with other madhabs, but it is the extent or how far you go to that issue, right? So again, Imam Ahmad, in essence, will not disagree with everybody in that issue. But when what is the Sunnah? This is the issue. Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal was like a great Imam, a great Hafiz. He's a Sheikh of al-Bukhari. He knew a lot of hadith, who compiled a lot of hadith. He knows what is sahih, what is not sahih, what he can be used and what can be used. He has his own understanding of that. So basically, when he says something is sahih sunnah, it is sahih. He can use it. The problem lies when generations after generation took that, and basically just any athar, any sunnah, anything that is related, even if it is da'if, weak, munkar, incorrect, they will just apply it. This is where it comes or cause issues in that madhab, or for some of the scholars affiliated with madhab al-Hanbali, although of course the imams, the great imams of madhab al-Hanbali themselves will rebut that and will reject it. But it lies the foundation of the two streams within the madhab, as we talked about. So al-madhab al-Hanbali, because of its extensive respect or extensive consideration of the text, worked or became like an environment and umbrella where infringed groups came under it. And that was a problem. Those were the scholars and the shuyukh and the followers who always caused trouble and problems historically within the madhab al-Hanbali. Again, as we said, he will be standing by the text in a general sense and at face value, which is great. But what text? That is the issue, right? So, for example, a general instruction requires specifications to act upon. There is a rule in the majority of opinions that on the three madhab, that if there is a general instructions being given, you don't apply it right away. You need to say, okay, what does it include in order to apply it? Now, Imam Ahmad has two madhab, and this also gives rise to the problem of the madhab was not written and documented by the time of Imam Ahmad. There are many narrations about what he said and what he didn't say, as we will see, and that creates another layer of problems. But anyway, there are two opinions of two narrations. In opinion of Imam Ahmad, one agrees with the majority of the other madhabs, one disagrees. And basically, this shows you which scholars in the madhab basically adopted which view. At the face value also, the text is interpreted as such unless at the face value, unless there is a clue or a sign that reinterpretation is needed to understand the meaning, which is similar to other madhabs as well. Okay, there's nothing there. So he will go to ta'wil and basically reapply interpretation in order to make the text or the Quran and Sunnah consistent So in Imam Ahmad's mind, which is totally correct, the Quran and Sunnah are the same. They are wahy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There cannot be contradiction. Quran and Sunnah, they do not contradict. So they will have to be understood consistently, which all mazhabs agree with. But again, which Sunnah? The Sahih, the proper, the thing that you affirmed, and how to apply it, and how, and so on. So this is the main issue. All right. Now, in terms of the coherent and opposed comprehension, there is something called مفهوم الموافقة ومفهوم المخالفة. I mean, I don't really want to go into that, but basically, he agrees with the madhabs about the other madhab about the coherent comprehension interpretation, the مفهوم الموافقة. Al-Hanafiya do not take or do not accept the opposed comprehension interpretation, which is مفهوم المخالفة, as hujjah. So anyway, now another principle in Imam Ahmad madhab is return the ambiguous to the explicit, which is, again, everybody, all madhabs agree with that. So basically, when you have like a ambiguous text, not clear, unclear, then you understand that in light of the explicit text. And the ambiguous text cannot be taken at face value, literal, without gathering and considering of other texts and evidence, which again, everybody agrees with. The problem now, let's take a sidebar and see how some of the Hanbali scholars twisted and basically turned this upside down, which caused corporeality. Why was Imam Ahmad against ilm al-kalam? Let's ask your questions, brother, for now, but because we have a very dense lesson, let's get through to it, and then I'll get back to the questions at the end of the lesson if there are time, inshallah. So how corporeality got into Hanbali Madhab. Now, Imam Muslim, rahimahullah, tells us like a glimpse of that, or gives us an explanation. Imam Muslim said in his book Tamyiz, he basically said, Busr ibn Sa'id, one of the tabi'in, said, اتقوا الله وتحفظوا من الحديث. All people do taqwa of piety of Allah, and تحفظوا من الحديث, do not just keep reciting or saying hadith without proper confirmation and affirmation and accuracy. فوالله لقد رأيتنا نجالس أبا هريرة. So basically, he will sit with Abu Huraira, like in lessons by Abu Huraira and others, and Abu Huraira will narrate a hadith for the Prophet, peace be upon him, and he will also tell them another narrations or another things that he heard from Ka'b al-Ahbar. Ka'b al-Ahbar was a Jew who became Muslim, but he basically will talk about what in the Bible and what in their what in their Torah and so on. And then we will go. After that, I will hear some of us will make what Abu Huraira will mismatch. We'll say, all right, we'll mix some of what we were being talking about, who was basically the source was Ka'b al-Ahbar, which is Israeliyat basically from Torah, and we will make it said by the Prophet, and we will mix what the Ka'b said and we'll make it, and what the Prophet said, and we'll make it said by Ka'b al-Ahbar. So they will mix. They will not up to the standard of hifz and so on, and writing down and combine. So basically, he said, be careful about that. So basically, he raised an issue about the da'if and the weak muhaddithin, basically introducing Israeliyat into the hadith and making it by the Prophet, peace be upon him. And because basically Imam Ahmad al-Madhab is basically built around the hadith, he was actually, in a sense, he was a collector of hadith more than more than a faqih. He was certainly a faqih for sure, but I mean, he wasn't even considering himself a faqih at the time or establishing a madhab or anything like that. That happened after that. And that's why scholars say المذهب الحنبلي is the madhab of scholars of Hanbali Madhab, not the madhab of Imam Ahmad necessarily. Right? This is very important. The three other madhabs are the madhabs of the Imam, their Imam. Madhab al-Hanbali is not really fully the madhab of Imam Ahmad. It is a madhab that has been mixed and matched by a lot of scholars together, even after Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. Okay? So let's see how that principle that we talked about before about like ambiguity, how any text is ambiguous, you need to return it to the explicit in order to understand it and make interpretation to it within or in light of that. Okay, so one of their scholars, I'll tell you who after we finish it. So one of their scholars say, رد الجهمية النصوص المحكمة. الجهمية, again, everybody who's against them is Jahmi, and Jahmiya basically are kuffar. So الجهمية, رد الجهمية النصوص المحكمة غاية الإحكام. So the explicit text has been rejected by الجهمية. For example, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is attributed with the perfection, the whole perfection of attributes like علم, knowledge, قدرة, إرادة, حياة, كلام, سمع, بصر. والوجه واليدين. See what he does is basically like, okay, yeah, of course, علم, قدرة, كلام, سمع, حياة, بصر, all that are attributes explicitly in the Quran has been affirmed. But where did you get the wajh واليدين from? I mean, those are, and then see how he puts them with the other sifat as if they are same level, everybody agrees on, and if anybody doesn't agree with them, there's basically kafir, because there is no Muslims that says that Allah doesn't have ilm or qudra or irada or haya, or like that's nonsense. Even Mu'tazila, they do not deny al-kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They just say it is not a that sifa, it is just a creation. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had kalam, and it is mu'jiz and miraculous and everything, but it is created. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created it, not as an attribute. But they do not deny, nobody denies, no Muslim denies the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. والوجه واليدين والغضب والرضا والفرح والضحك. So basically hands and face and anger and pleasure or pleasant, being pleasure or pleasant, joy and happiness, laughing, mercy, wisdom. See how he mixes them together and put them all in the same bucket. And also he is attributable with af'al, actions, kalmaji, as coming and going and descending to the heavens and so on. And then he says, وَالْعِلْمُ بِمَجِيءِ الرَّسُولِ بِذَلِكَ. The Prophet, peace be upon him, came with that. And he talked about, basically narrated that to us and told us about that. So it is a necessary knowledge as your knowledge that prayer, Siyam, Hajj, Zakah is mandatory. So basically, if you don't say those, if you don't agree with them that what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a face and has two hands and do anger and come descend and ascend and all that kind of like corporeal stuff, you are basically Jahmi kafir, right? It is exactly as that necessary knowledge of that the prayer and Hajj and fasting and Zakah are mandatory. And anyway, and basically this is a fard that you have to agree on that. And the iman, aslul iman, the fundamental foundation of iman, of belief, that does not happen unless you say that. Again, everybody who doesn't say that is a kafir. And then he continues. So all that, despite all that, and they are mandatory and you have to believe in all that, al-Jahmiyyah rejected this by al-Mutashabih. من قوله ليس كمثله شيء. See how this guy and this man, he's a scholar. I'll tell you who. I think I'm sure most of you will maybe even all of you will be very astonished and surprised by the end of this. But anyway, ليس كمثله شيء. The ayah ليس كمثله شيء, nothing like him. He makes it ambiguous, not explicit, not clear. And he says that al-Jahmiyyah use those like this ayah ليس كمثله شيء هل تعلم له سمية وقل هو الله أحد. which are, in his opinion, ambiguous. So they make it explicit. So see the problem with this guy. So when he says يد الله فوق أيديهم, he considers this to be explicit text, scripture. But قل هو الله أحد is ambiguous. ليس كمثله شيء, nothing like him, is ambiguous. He turned that upside down. See how they think? قل هو الله أحد, which is basically saying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is the أصل الإيمان, أصل التوحيد, the foundation of Tawheed. It has to be explicit. If it is not explicit, then Christians may have a go at that. Oh yeah, so it's open for interpretation. You say it is ambiguous. Well, we have our own version of interpretation, which you think is correct. How can you say it is not? You agree with us that this ayah, which you stand by, is not explicit. And this is the danger of those people, that with their narrow-minded and intolerance and like not acceptance of anything else and so on, their literal understanding or lack of understanding, they actually give ammunition to non-Muslims to attack Islam principle and theology. And that's why the Imams of Aqidah stood against those guys. I mean, it is not just they are, they could have just washed that away and say, okay, you are non-cynical, you don't know what you're talking about, and ignore them, which happened to a lot of other like crazy sayings. But when that crazy saying is actually like demolishing some of the principles of Islam in itself, then you have to rebut that. Anyway, so you see how they turn things upside down, and basically this is Ibn al-Qayyim. Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawziyya or Ibn al-Qayyim, right? One of the main students of Ibn Taymiyyah, basically narrating and saying the same things of Ibn Taymiyyah's madhab. Just gives you how they give you a glimpse how they think. So from that you can see that Imam Ahmad madhab got affiliated by a group of people who actually got deviated, but they would affiliate themselves with the madhab. These basically like this group of people who are the scholars called Mugassimi al-Hanabila, the corporealist of Hanbali Madhab. And the problem with those is that at some point of time during history, they were the mainstream of Madhab Ahmad ibn Hanbal. Right? They were basically just to the extent they were all the Hanbali. You will say, okay, the Hanbali al-Hanabila, and it would be like a blanket calling for all of them, because basically there's a majority of them, there's all of them at that point of time. But of course, as we will see, other scholars like Imam Ibn al-Jawzi and so on rebutted that. And by the way, so that you don't get confused, Ibn al-Qayyim is not Ibn al-Jawzi. This guy is Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyya. Ibn al-Jawzi is a different scholar. Okay? Ibn al-Jawzi is a great scholar of Imam Hanbali Madhab. Ibn al-Qayyim is not. He is corporealist. And then you can see that Ibn al-Athir, one of the great scholars, he wrote an event happened in the year 324. And he says, is Ibn al-Qayyim kafir? Of course not, brother. He's not kafir. He's deviant. Ibn al-Qayyim, Ibn Taymiyyah, those are deviant scholars. They are scholars. They were scholars. All right? So they have knowledge and they have good opinions, sometimes some good books and so on. But they were in Aqidah and some of fiqh issues, they were corporealist and had shadh aqwal and shadh opinions. Right? And the ulama, the scholars rebutted them. The problem now is those becomes a figure, the followed figures of some group nowadays, this is a problem, right? So Imam Ibn Athir says, وَفِيهَا عَظَمْ أَمْرَ الْحَنَابِلَةِ وَقَوَّتْ شَوْكَتُهُم. So basically they became strong and have and وَزَادَ شَرُّهُم, their evil increased. وَعَنَتُهُم وَاسْتَظْهَرُوا بِالْعُمْيَانِ, they will go to the blind, and then there were blind people who just basically go to the masjid and stay there. And then al-Hanabila, those people will go to those blind people and give him money and or tell him something to basically go to the like pass when they are in the street or wherever in the road, and someone Shafi'i, من الشافعية or Ash'ari and so on, because Shafi'iyya were Ash'ari. If any of those people passed by them, they basically hit him with their sticks until that Shafi'i may even die or could die. So the Amir al-Mu'minin at that time, al-Radi Billah, basically made like a declaration calling out those Hanabila, and he told them, إنه تارة تزعمون, you claim sometimes that أن صورة وجوهكم, your image of you or your image of those your ugly faces is basically like the Rabbul Alamin, because they have that also hadith that خلق الله آدم على صورته. So basically Adam was created in the surah in which century? Brother, I just said 321 century, 4th century, 324. Now I forgot what I was saying. Anyway, this is basically what the Khalifa said to them, basically rebutting what they are saying, and basically threatening them. If you ever try to do that again, I will do that and that to you. So basically he says, how can you claim that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a face like your faces, your ugly faces, and has a shape or form like your dirty shape or form? And you mentioned that Allah has a wajh, a face, 2 hands, even fingers. They even like debate among themselves whether Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has 3 or 5 or 6 fingers. And Al-Fawzan, one of their scholars now, basically say no, it's actually 6 fingers. That's the correct opinion. That's madness, crazy. والشعر القطط والصعود إلى السماء, ascending and descending, all those kind what we're saying. ثم طعنكم على خيار الأمة, then you basically abusing of the best of the ummah, and calling Muslims بدعة مبتدعة and deviant, and then إنكاركم زيارة قبور الأئمة وتشنيعكم على زوارها بالابتداع, saying that those who go to visit the graves of أئمة is bid'ah, and that's and basically you abuse them, while at the same time you gather to visit a grave of a رجل من العوام, lay person, not honorable, ولا نسب ولا سبب برسول الله, nothing whatsoever, and you instruct and command and order that you have to go and visit his grave. وتدعون له معجزات الأنبياء وكرامات الأولياء, and you claim that he had كرامات and معجزات as if he was a prophet. فإن الشيطان زين لكم هذه المنكرات بإغوائه. The devil basically fooled you to say that. So basically قبور الأئمة, those who has nasab with the Nabi, the Prophet, peace be upon him, they will stand against that, and the other way around. So basically this is just give you a glimpse of that, what you were doing at the time. I think I'm running out of time. I have to speed up a little bit. And then also Ibn Asakir basically said commanding and praising the Madhab al-Ash'ari, so on. And also we talked about that before, what Imam Tajuddin Subki said about al-Madhab, so Hanafi Madhab, Shafi'i, Maliki, wa Fudala al-Hanabila. This is where the Fudala al-Hanabila comes. The Fudala al-Hanabila is the term the scholars gave to the Hanbali stream, who was actually on the proper Hanbali Madhab and following Imam Ahmad proper sayings, not their mere understanding of saying, or some sayings that are not affirmed or not sahih, as we will see. And all those are basically in al-Aqidah is just one hand, all of them following Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah madhab of Imam al-Azhari, and so on and so forth, and except some of Hanafiya thugs or like low people of Hanafiya followed Ahl al-I'tizal, Mu'tazila, and low people of Hanabila lahqu bi Ahl al-Tajin. There's basically the corporeal stream, and so on. Now, Imam Sheikh al-Azhar, the current Sheikh al-Azhar, in one of televised interviews, and I heard that by myself, said that مستوى ابن تيمية في العلم does not exceed an Azhari Sheikh, doesn't even have a magister or a doctorate, doesn't even have a master or a doctorate. And that basically is a mu'alif. There was a great Sheikh, and this is not like degrading that Sheikh, that Azhari Sheikh or something. He was a great scholar, but he didn't even did master or doctorate. That doesn't mean that had he done that, he would have more knowledge. He was a very, very knowledgeable man. He wrote a book about, its name is Ibn Taymiyyah laysa Salafiyan. Ibn Taymiyyah is not follower of the Salaf. And basically he rebutted Ibn Taymiyyah, everything that Ibn Taymiyyah said. He also said, Sheikh al-Azhar said, some teachers in al-Azhar, basically, due to their lack of knowledge, they followed that deviant madhab of what they call now madhab Salafi, or which is madhab Ibn Taymiyyah. Ibn Taymiyyah fihi khayr. So there is, as we like back to your point, brother Ibn Qayyim, Ibn Taymiyyah, they had good things, but they had also a lot of bad things. So that's the problem. You have to distinguish. You just don't take anything that it says that they say at face value. I mean, we even talked about that before. Even like Imam Fakhr al-Razi, the scholars wouldn't just, and Muslims wouldn't, Ahl Sunnah scholars wouldn't just take whatever he says and say, yeah, that's, blindly followed it. They will verify and they will rebut whatever is incorrect. The madhab corrects itself because nobody is perfect. So those who claim to be Salafis and so on, they basically reduced the entire deen into 4 people or few people. That's basically the Sheikh al-Azhar was saying that. He also said Ibn al-Jawzi wa ghayrahu min al-Hanabila. So those who are the proper and the Fudala al-Hanabila, the other stream, the proper stream of Hanbali Madhab, rebutted the corporealist and basically affirmed and proved that Imam Ahmad was not on that madhab that he claimed to be. And that Imam Ahmad actually did ta'wil, made reinterpretation. فهو من المؤولة. He is actually one of those scholars who accept reinterpretation. So all that in the book of like a lot of books, Ibn al-Jawzi book, for example, I think we talked about that before. I got it here. We're going to look at it shortly. Also, Imam Sheikh al-Azhar said, مذهب التيار السلفي المعاصر مستمد من غلاة الحنابلة. So the current Salafis movement is basically affiliated or based on the extremists of Hanabila, and they do not represent the Salaf al-Salih, and they do not represent the proper or the Madhab al-Hanbali. Okay. All that is important because of all of the problems and the issues that like a lot of those corporeal and extremism do, and then they say we are Hanbali. The lay persons and the lay people started to think, yeah, Madhab Hanbali, then Imam Ahmad, that's the bad person. We shouldn't follow it. So we're just trying to show that Imam Ahmad and Madhab Hanbali is innocent or are innocent. The Madhab, the proper Madhab, and the Imam himself innocent from those corporealists and those extremists. They do not represent them. And we talked about that in al-Aqidah lesson, one of the Aqidah lessons. This is basically the rebut of Imam Ibn al-Jawzi to those corporealist stream in Mazhab Ibn Ahmad ibn Hanbal. He had a book, very good book, a great book actually, which is دفع شبهة من don't remember the name now. دفع شبهة من شبه وتمرد ونسب ذلك إلى الإمام أحمد, something like that. دفع شبهة التشبيه بعكوف التنزيه, I think. Anyway, so basically in that book he rebutted all that. And remember, the Imam Ibn al-Jawzi died 597. Ibn Taymiyyah died 728, so he's way before Imam, like Imam Ibn al-Jawzi, way before Ibn Taymiyyah. Ibn Taymiyyah basically, Imam Ibn al-Jawzi was rebutting some of the scholars like Abu Ya'la and Ibn al-Zaghuni, who were Hanabila, but they were corporealist and basically adopted some of corporealism views. Ibn Taymiyyah came later and revived that stream and re-established it, and so on. Through, by the way, very low way and maneuvering and lies and deceive to basically fool the lay person, the lay people, which we show some examples in previous courses. Anyway, so now let's continue the basis of the Madhab al-Hanbali. Sunnah rank, we said the Quran tafsir is like, we said that Imam Ahmad already like put Sunnah in a very high rank. In his view, the Quran tafsir is done in light of the Sunnah. Again, nobody disagrees with that. And every Sahih Sunnah is accepted as standalone and without verifying against the Quran. So this is where it differs. So Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal will just Sunnah, if there is a Sunnah, accepted, done. There is no another layer or a process of verification against Quran to make sure it's correct. Again, because Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal was great already and have a rigorous methodology and coherent methodology in establishing what is Sunnah Sahiha and so on. If you don't do that, then you will consider weak Sunnah or no Sunnah at all as a Sunnah, and then you will create a contradiction with the Quran, which is incorrect. Sunnah may clarify the meaning of the ayah if it requires tafsir. So if the ayah requires tafsir mujmal, it's basically general ayah or something like a word that is general, then you go to the Sunnah to clarify it. Or Sunnah may be reinterpreted. You do reinterpretation of the Sunnah if it contradicts with the ayah at the base value. Again, like more or less the same. It doesn't goes against the other madhabs. It's just the way or the approach of receive or achieving the same goal. Right, but that now, so you can see those are like all the scholars until now has the Sunnah and the Athar as the main principle, or one of the main principles and the basis of their madhab. So they are all Athari in truth, in reality. However, some of those claim to be Atharis nowadays are not really Atharis. They bring in lies and the fabricated ahadith and fabricated accounts, and they put it in books, and basically they apply it, and they threw the Quran out if like they don't accept the Quran if it doesn't when it contradicts whatever they say, or they twist the ayah to make it in agreeing with what those weak akhbar and da'if and the fabricated hadith is. So this is a problem, and they call themselves Athari. Athari doesn't mean that any book with nonsense you follow. That's basically incorrect. You have to make sure that you are following proper Sunnah, not something that's been lied. And we just showed earlier that Imam Muslim himself says, be careful. As one of the Tabi'in, Busr ibn Sa'id, said, some of those who affiliate themselves or claim they are Ahl Hadith will mix Hadith together, and they will basically be narrating Israeliyat as if it is said by the Prophet, peace be upon him. So the main difference you can see here, the main difference between fiqh scholars who are more inclined towards the opinion-based school and those who are more inclined toward the hadith or athar is that the opinion-based schools more or less or basically will not change the scope of the ayah based on ahad sunnah. We talked about what is ahad sunnah before, so I'm not going to be repeating that, but anything that is ahad sunnah, they will basically not narrow down or change the scope of the ayah to agree with it, because they have the Quran is established 100%. The Sunnah, even if it is Sahih, there is a doubt about it unless there is a more clues to support that it's totally or fully Sahih, and then we'll have to make them consistent together. However, the others will say no, the Sunnah, the Ahad will basically narrow down the scope of the Hadith-based school. Will narrow down the scope of the ayah based on the Hadith, if it is Sahih. Right, his opinion, Imam Ahmad's opinion about Ahad Hadith, whether it leads to or gives certain knowledge or not. There are two narrations, not two opinions, two narrations. Some narration, again, as I said, because there were multiple narrations about Imam Ahmad saying. So there is a narration that it causes or it leads to certain knowledge. The second narration, no, it doesn't. Hanbali scholars themselves different in weighing the two narrations against each other. So there is like a different opinion whether which one is actually the proper or the real opinion of Imam Ahmad. Most usul scholars say it doesn't, and it does not lead or provide a certain knowledge. And the other narration about Imam Ahmad that it actually does provide that level of knowledge. It only means that is the case when there are other supportive evidence and clues and signs to support that, which again all the other agrees with. So if there's a Ahad Khabar, for example, but it's very widespread, and it is, for example, narrated by Imam Ahmad for Shafi'i, for Malik, right? And it is in Sahih al-Bukhari and in Sahih Muslim, and with all those clues, it elevates that Ahad to a very high level of acceptance. It's basically, you cannot deny it. And that's basically everybody agrees with. There is no fundamental difference in that aspect. But when you bring in a khabar or a athar that is not supported by evidence and is not, even if it is sahih, it's just one khabar by itself, and it goes against the Quran, and then you claim that it affirms the certain knowledge, then you are being unreasonable. And there's a position held by a lot of those claimed to be Salafis and so on. And Ibn al-Qayyim also has that and try to support that. Imam Ahmad also say that acceptable ahad are suitable to affirm aqidah. Also can be acted upon in Sharia hudud, in the hudud that have been affirmed or been established through Sunnah are hudud. Most Hanafi scholars do not accept that. About weak hadith, whether he will accept weak hadith or not, there are three narrations. The first one, narration about Imam Ahmad, the first one is acting upon it and give it priority with the condition that there is no other text in the area. So if there is a weak hadith, he will consider it and give it priority over the fatwa, after the fatwa of Sahaba. So Sahaba fatwa is first and then weak hadith, if there is no other text in the area, in this section, this issue they are talking about. Another narration that acting upon it in actions or virtues only, fadal al-a'mal, and then another narration not accepting it. Most usul scholars of Madhab Hanbali will accept weak hadith under these conditions, which is, it shows you that those nowadays who claim to be Hanbali Madhab or following Hanbali or whatever, and rejects all the hadith, the weak hadith, for fiqh issues and actions of virtues, they are basically more or less going against the majority of the madhab. And it is the irony, and because at the same time they will accept weak hadith and they will accept even fabricated akhbar and athar to establish aqidah, which is the exact opposite of what he should be doing. Again, for Sahabi opinion, there are two narrations, whether it is hujjah or not. In the unidentified interest, al-masalih al-mursala, we talked about that is mostly used in Imam Malik Madhab. But Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal expanded or actually used it a lot as well, not to the same extent as Imam Malik, to a lesser extent, but he uses it more than the other madhabs, Hanafi and Shafi'i madhabs. About al-istishab, carrying status over changes in situation, there is no specific position in the madhab. It's a case-by-case basis. For preferential deduction and customs, basically the al-istihsan and al-urf, he agrees on the principles and used them, especially in the contracts, about dealings, contracts, and so on in fiqh, where Hanbali scholars expand upon the custom principle and consider the aims and objectives rather than the literal words of the contracts, and consider what people are accustomed to. So they are very close to the Hanafi madhab in their situation, or in that sense. Because and also the Maliki as well. So basically, you can see that they are not literal. The proper scholars of Madhab Hanbali are not people who just takes literal or zahiriya or anything like that. They are actually they apply common sense, apply proper knowledge, and apply proper rationale in reaching their conclusions. So we will take an example of extremism in the Mazhab al-Hanbali, and we'll talk about one of their great and main scholars of Madhab al-Hanbali, al-Barbihari, who was basically the Sheikh of Hanabila in his city and his time. But he was an extremist guy. Again, the Madhab al-Hanbali, as we said, the problem is it combined people with proper understanding and fuqaha, truly fuqaha. It also included under the umbrella people who just hafiz of a hadith, right? But they went out of their league trying to establish aqidah when they don't even know, don't really understand what they are preaching. It included, which led to corporeality, and it also included extremism under the same umbrella. So this scholar here, he is again great scholar of fiqh and so on and so forth, and he was pious and all that kind of stuff. I mean, we talked about that before. You don't judge truth or haqq by people. You do the other way around. If they say the haqq, then you realize or understand or recognize the haqq in its own merit, not because somebody said that, right? So anyway, he considered himself the official speaker of the Quran and Sunnah. Anyone who does agree with anything he says is deviant and kafir. He was born in 233, so he was about 9 years old when Imam Ahmad died. So basically, he didn't take anything from Imam Ahmad. A main feature of this scholar was intolerance and extremism, to the extent that he refused to inherit from his father 700,000 dirhams. Now he has a book called Sharh al-Sunnah, and again, this is one of those people. They will write books called it Sunnah and Sharh al-Sunnah as if anything else is not Sunnah. That is a Sunnah, and that only our understanding of it is a Sunnah. Anybody else is deviant or kafir. He says in that book, if you heard someone takes a jab, yat'an, on athar, and does not accept them, or denies anything of akhbar, the Prophet peace be upon him, then, or akhbar of the Prophet peace be upon him, then accuse him of not having Islam. Right? Okay, but we know that several hadith scholars, great hadith scholars, questioned and raised issues with over 200 hadith in Bukhari and Muslim. They are not jabbing the Prophet akhbar or anything. If it was affirmed, or basically there is an evidence that is actually said by the Prophet or done by the Prophet, then done. That is not the issue. We are not rejecting what the Prophet did or done or said. We are rejecting that it does not actually, it didn't actually happen. The Prophet actually did not say that. Okay, that's the point. That's where these people tend to fool and deceive the lay people. Then he says, know that deen is imitation. Deen is taqlid. Well, so yeah, you imitate me basically blindly, and then that's how to have your deen. Don't think. This is how they say, and this is actually said by a recent sheikh of those people, or those that Tayar Salafi recently. He said, in Aqidah, I want you to be donkey. Don't think. Right. So that's basically how they operate. Right. It's not a secret. He also said, the al-Barbahari scholar, who said my uttered word of Quran is created is Jahmi, and who stopped and did not say also Jahmi. So basically, if he, like, as I said, you're uttering of the word. If you say this created, you are Jahmi. Jahmi kafir. Done. If you stop to say I don't know, then you're also Jahmi kafir. So basically, the only way out is it is not created. You have to say it is not created. If you don't say that, you are Jahmi kafir. And then he also said, Ahmad ibn Hanbal said, Jahmi is kafir, his blood is halal. وَدَمُهُ halal. Okay, you can see the extremism, the how easily it is for to say, all right, anybody who disagrees with him, that's kafir, you can kill him, you should kill him, and so on. The real deen is from when the Prophet died until the killing of Uthman, until Uthman was killed. So basically, that's a proper deen. That's the real deen. Okay, so what about the deen during the Prophet time? That's actually that is the proper deen, not after the Prophet died. And why only until Uthman? What about Ali? Because they don't like Ali, right? That's basically, and this is like a feature in Ibn Taymiyyah and so on. He degrade Ali ibn Abi Talib a lot and so on. Also, he said, everything I described to you in this book is from Allah and His Prophet and His Sahaba and Tabi'een. Basically, I speak for Allah. So do taqwa, servant, be taqwa, and submit and accept everything in this book. This is the deen of Allah and His Messenger. And anyone who permits himself to do something not in this book, then he does not follow any of Allah's religion. He's not Muslim. He doesn't have any religion. He makes his book as if it is the Quran. You cannot even accept or reject one letter. He says, and he is who is anybody or he that who rejected all of it. I think there's a problem in my translation here. This is meant to be that anybody who rejects a word of it or a letter of it is like anybody who rejects a letter or something in the Quran. Right? Like basically rejecting, no, he says rejecting anything in this book is like rejecting or like that person who rejects a word or a letter in the Quran. He's a kafir. Anybody who said this ayah is not in the Quran, I don't accept this ayah is in the Quran, you are a kafir. You have to accept the Quran as is. So he's saying that also applies to my book. If you reject something of it, it is like you reject the Quran. Right? Why is that? Because, okay, you provide things from, if your kitab is basically just ayat, then yeah, it is compilation of some ayat. It's the Quran, all right. But if you put a hadith that in your opinion it is sahih but it is not, or you did not have any evidence or proof it is proper or it is sahih or anything like that, you say something and there is no rationale, or you do not provide an evidence that is correct. Why do you force, or you want to force people to accept it and follow it? And if they didn't follow it blindly by imitation, as you said earlier, then they are like rejecting the Quran. All right? And these are the scholars who have hijacked the Madhab al-Hanbali for some period of time. Until, like as we said earlier, Ibn al-Athir saying about that incident, and he calling al-Hanabila. So basically, those were the mainstream at the time. Okay? To the extent, by the way, that madhab almost died because it got hijacked so much. People went rejected it and went away from it. So some scholars changed their madhab to Hanbali to preserve it, like Abdul Qadir al-Jilani. He was Shafi'i madhab. And then because of that, he changed it to Ahmad ibn Hanbal madhab to preserve it, and wrote in the madhab and tried to correct it and so on and so forth. So there were a great efforts from scholars to preserve and make sure that madhab continues, because it is a great madhab. Like the proper madhab of Ahmad ibn Hanbal is really great madhab. And like nowadays, there are a lot of fatwas based on that madhab. And if it wasn't for that madhab, or madhab Ahmad ibn Hanbal in these issues, it would have been a great hardship for the ummah, because that madhab actually provides easement to the day-to-day life of a lot of Muslims in certain areas. One of the incidents that is narrated or happened, that's I think narrated by al-Zahabi, in the year 317, that when that Barbahari was alive, before he dies. A great fitna occurred in Baghdad for tafsir of ayah عسى أن يبعثك ربك مقاما محمودا in Surah Al-Isra. May your Lord raise you to a station of praise. Now, those people who are al-Barbahari, follower of al-Barbahari, and those Hanabila at the time, Hanbali said, sits him on the throne, and others even sit with him. So there's a madhab that some will say, they make interpretation of this ayah that al-Maqam al-Mahmud, this station of praise, is that the Prophet will sit on the throne. Okay, some will add with Allah. Okay, al-Arsh, يقعده على العرش. That is their madhab. And they supported that, and basically a fight happened because the other scholars say no, there is a sahih hadith that it is a shafa'a al-uzma. But basically that caused the fitna among themselves, and they fought, and many were killed. Okay, so you can see how they will have that intolerance and ta'assub to what extent. And they will reject the sahih hadith for a madhab. They say as per Mujahid. First, Mujahid is one of the great tabi'in or mufassirin. But that saying is actually not sahih for Mujahid. There is no sanad, proper sanad for it. So they will just take any narration or anything like that and just say whatever they want and adopt it with no isnad, with nothing, and reject the hadith al-sahiha that goes against that, and to the extent that they will fight and kill others for it. So in 317 they will do that. This is just one example of the fitna and the problems and the fights that they caused. And we said, as we said earlier, in the 324, after that was just few. In another area, they basically would put blind in the way of Shafi'i, and then they will basically make them hit the Shafi'i with their sticks. Now, Imam al-Safadi said about al-Barbahari, he was faqih and worshipper, like abid. So he was known for doing ibadah, and he's a faqih. There are a lot of fitna between groups, tawa'if and so on, used to occur because of him. That also included groups of Shia as well, who called for arrest. He was called for arrest by runaway and hid. Then the Amir at the time died, and somebody else came on power. Then he came out of hiding and restarted him and his group started those issues again. And again, he was called for arrest until he hid again and died 93 years old. Anyway, so we will continue with the Hanbali Madhab. So opinions of Imam Ahmad. Now, we talked about the fact that Imam Ahmad, because his madhab and his opinions weren't really documented at his time when he was alive, because he instructed everybody or his students not to write down his opinions, because he was worried that he may say something not accurate, not correct, or whatever. So he wasn't. We didn't want to be responsible for that for generations and generations, out of piety and pious. So because of that, there are many opinions, and basically this is what we're going to be discussing. There are number of narrations. People narrated that Imam Ahmad said so and so, but then others will be narrating, no, he said that, he said this. It's going to be, sometimes it is different context. So he said both those things, but you need to understand them together consistently to come up with what exactly Imam Ahmad meant, and so on. So we'll be addressing that. But also, before we continue, something that you need to bear in mind is Imam Ahmad radiallahu anhu was, as I said, very pious. Wari' is very worried about what his actions and what he's saying and so on. His focus really was the proper way of how we should behave in collecting knowledge. He was collecting the hadith, collecting the knowledge, every hadith he could collect and verify that and so on. Not just to collect, but also to apply it in his day-to-day life. And that was like and still for sure, that's really what we need to do. So his opinions and so forth and fatwas and everything that he's been teaching and telling his students is not to create his madhab or anything like that. It was basically out of his application, how to apply that and to teach, and basically teaching his students how to apply that in their day-to-day life. And he was a very pious man. So you need to bear that in mind. Sometimes fatwa is for the weak man, not for the very pious, very hard, who can basically do the azaim, the most difficult kind of worships. Okay? So there's something that you need to bear in mind. So as I said, we have number of narrations for Imam Ahmad, quotes, and that's what they are called. There are three levels. There is the narrations, which are quotes narrated to Imam Ahmad, like a scholar, Hanbali scholar or whatever with isnad will say, so and so, that person told us that the other person told him that the other person told him that Imam Ahmad said, for example, like with isnad. And Imam Ahmad said so and so. It says like a direct quote of what Imam Ahmad said. So these are called narrations. And there are remarks. So these are not direct quotes. They are basically something that has been concluded out of something that Imam Ahmad said. So Imam Ahmad would have said something, and then somebody else will, like another scholar or other generation, come up to him or his students or whatever, see that and will conclude something based on the context, based on the understanding of the scholar. So it is something that is implied. So this is called remarks. Okay, so there are narrations and remarks. Remarks are something that is implied by what Imam Ahmad said. And then there are ways, awju, which are basically opinions of the scholars based on the usul of Imam Ahmad. So these are the three levels of like the opinions of Imam, like the Madhab al-Hanbali, when it is referenced to Imam Ahmad opinions, his own opinions and something like that. Narrations is something that he himself said. Remarks, something that's been implied from what he said. Ways are something that scholars like extracted based on the usul of Imam Ahmad and how the methodology of how he approached the scripture and the text. Okay, so the other side, or the other part of that is how can you, how the Madhab, the Hanbali Madhab established what Imam Ahmad said then? What are when there are multiple narrations? All right, so if there are two opinions, combine if possible. Sometimes there are more than two opinions, so, or narrations. So when you have multiple narrations, try to combine if possible. As I said, maybe based on the context, it is like general statement made in some in like an event, but then he in other event, in other question, maybe he had elaborated further and explained it further. So you need to understand them both together. So if possible, you can combine them and understand them in a consistent way. Then that's basically is considered the opinion of Imam Ahmad. If that is not applicable, if you cannot basically combine them in a consistent way, they are totally contradictory, then the date, if the date is known, there are different opinions within the madhab. Some will take the second opinion as the madhab, right? We say, okay, so he said first so and so, and then after that he says something else. They are contradictory, which mean he may have reverted or basically left the first opinion. We will adopt the second or the latest. Others will say, no, we'll take the first, not the latest. So others even say, we'll take the first, even if it was clear that he changed his mind, and after that, we'll still take the first. So basically, there are different opinions how to treat or how to adopt, or which opinion, which statement of Imam Ahmad they will accept. If there is no date, so you cannot determine which statement or which opinion is or which narration is older, which one is not, or like more recent. In that case, they just basically look at the closer to the evidence or to the rules or the methodology of how Imam Ahmad uses his like way of approaching the evidence, as we said. Also, any inference based on his quotes considered is madhab. So even if he didn't say that, but like the scholars will make inferences based on some of his quotes, and this will be considered among the scholars as the madhab. And that's why we, as I said earlier when we started, that the madhab Hanbali is a bit different than the other madhab. It is not necessarily, or it is not the madhab of Imam Ahmad himself. It is a madhab of Hanabila. Okay, not madhab of Imam Ahmad himself necessarily. Okay, this is a very important feature in that madhab that you have to be aware of, because as I said, it was, and as we're going to see when we talk about the books, it was like about almost 100 years when they started actually writing about this madhab. So many scholars and books. Now the many scholars, like starting a timeline, we talked about who narrated for him and who started collating the fiqh and making weighing between the evidence and so on. And we have one of the main figures in the madhab Hanbali is Abu al-Qasim ibn al-Husayn, died 334. He made considerable efforts in weighing between narrations of Imam Ahmad and wrote Mukhtasar al-Kharqi. Right? So that's what you can say the first coherent document or book written in that madhab, which is almost like it is over 90 years after Imam Ahmad died. Abu Bakr ibn Abdul Aziz ibn Ja'far, also known as Ghulam al-Khallal. Remember, al-Khallal is Abu Bakr al-Khallal, which is actually like a corporealist, or has a corporealist aspect in his opinion. So, and this man is different. This is not the Abu Bakr al-Khallal. This is one of his main students, because he was so close to him, and like one of his main students of that Abu al-Khallal scholar. He was called Ghulam al-Khallal. He died 363. And then we have Al-Qadi Abu Ya'la al-Farra, a great scholar in the madhab, and like one of the pillars of the madhab, died 458. And one of the most mujtahideen of the madhab, but he was corporealist. Right? He was influenced by the corporealism and adopted many of the corporealist views. And it like he has some muttarib in that he has some confusion, or not confusion, like inconsistency in certain areas, but he adopted the corporealist views in many parts. And he was one of the main scholars that Imam Ibn al-Jawzi rebutted. As we talked earlier, Imam Ibn al-Jawzi wrote a book rebutting those corporealist stream in the madhab, and Al-Qadi Abu Ya'la was one of those that he named, like like specifically Ibn Zaghuni, Abu Ya'la, and so on. So you can see here why the Madhab al-Hanbali included those corporealism and those two streams. Yeah, though the Abu Ya'la al-Farra was a great fiqh scholar, but that doesn't necessarily transfer to Aqidah, right? And this is a very important concept that you have to grasp. Ibn Uqayl. Ibn Uqayl was a great scholar, died 513, Shaykh of al-Madhab, but actually he wasn't corporealist, he was from the proper Hanbali Madhab, or more more to that side, which is a non-corporealist stream. Ibn Abi Ya'la, he's different, he's not the same as Abu Ya'la. And Abu Ya'la al-Saghir. Abu Ya'la al-Saghir is actually the son of Abu Ya'la, died 560. Again, those are main figures in the Madhab. Ibn al-Zaghuni, again, another main figure, but he is corporealist. And when I say he's corporealist, that doesn't necessarily mean in every aspect, because at that time even there were inconsistencies and confusion about certain issues within the Madhab themselves. So you will find that Ibn Taymiyyah is actually more corporealist and got like very 100% corporealist than Abu Ya'la and Ibn Zaghuni and so on. He built on what they have done and basically even took it to another level. So every generation comes, it's actually more into that corporeality than the previous generations, like in general. Also, we have Imam Ibn al-Jawzi, as we said, died 597, and that was a really great Imam. And when you show that, you see what Ibn al-Jawzi was Hanbali and great Hanbali Imam on the way of Ahl Sunnah al-Jama'ah, and he rebutted that like corporealist and extremism views within the Madhab. Those who still stick with Ibn Taymiyyah Madhab and the other Madhab will say, no, he was Mu'tazili. He wasn't Mu'tazili. He didn't have anything to do with the Mu'tazili. There's no, Mu'tazili at that time didn't really have much grasp on everything. It's basically it's nonsense what they are saying, just trying to get out of and trying to de-water what Imam Ibn al-Jawzi is saying, and basically making a blank statement. No, he's a Mu'tazili. Don't look at what he said, threw his books away. That's crazy. He was not from Mu'tazila. He was Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and he rebutted your corporeal views, and he's Hanbali. And he basically clarified what exactly was Imam Ahmad Madhab, and proved that it had nothing to do with those who claim to be following Imam Ahmad. Ibn Qudama al-Maqdisi, Shaykh of al-Madhab, a great scholar as well. Majduddin ibn Taymiyyah and Taqiyuddin ibn Taymiyyah, Ahmad ibn Taymiyyah. Taqiyuddin ibn Taymiyyah is Ibn Taymiyyah who was corporealist. He actually came from a very famous and very well-known scholars family. Ibn al-Qayyim, as we talked about before. Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali, he was a student of Ibn Taymiyyah and actually rebutted him after he finished, he didn't follow whatever he said, and replied and rebutted many of Ibn Taymiyyah's views. He was a great scholar as well, Imam Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali, very famous, very known. All right, so some of the main books, again, I think we've spent so much time in this, so perhaps I'm just going to list those. You have Al-Iqna' by Musa ibn Ahmad al-Maqdisi, Al-Mughni explanation of Mukhtasar al-Kharqi that we talked about before, and so on. And then the main fatwa books and so on. Muntaha al-Iradat, and Al-Iqna' by Musa al-Hijawi, and then there are a lot of other explanation to these two books and so on. So well, I think that's encapsulate what we want to say about the Mazhab al-Hanbali. If you have any questions, please post them in the group. We'll try to address them as soon as we can. I don't see any questions now, so Next time, inshallah, we'll continue with the sources, like general talk about the sources of Sharia, what is it, and give some examples to tie everything together. We're going to also talk about the قواعد, some of the قواعد الفقهية, the fiqh rules that are applicable to some extent. We'll try to cover that just to give you an understanding. And that will be it. I think we'll probably need one or two more lessons, inshallah, and we can conclude this course. All right. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أستغفرك اللهم من كل ذنب وأتوب إليك وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. السلام عليكم.